They said I'd never dance again. The doctor's words echoed in my hospital room, as cold and sterile as the machines keeping me alive. My reflection was a stranger, scarred, diminished, angry. Simple tasks I'd taken for granted now seemed like insurmountable challenges. Brushing my teeth, getting dressed, even sitting up in bed, each action required monumental effort and left me exhausted. But with each small victory, that spark within me grew stronger. Tears streamed down my face as I grappled with this new reality. But beneath the grief, I felt a flicker of something else. I saw the pain in their eyes, the worry etched on their faces. Their stories of resilience and triumph inspired me, showing me that there was life, rich, full, meaningful life, beyond tragedy. I started attending support groups, at first just to listen, but soon found myself sharing my own journey. I threw myself into advocacy work, speaking at hospitals, schools, and community centers. I shared my story not as a tale of loss, but as one of transformation. Yes, I had lost my legs, but I had gained so much more: strength, perspective, and a deep appreciation for the resilience of the human spirit. They tried to hide it, to be strong for me, but I could feel their fear. It only fueled my determination. As I wheeled onto the stage, facing a sea of expectant faces, I felt my old insecurities resurface. As I wheeled into the room, I saw myself reflected in their eyes, the fear, the anger, the despair. But I also saw the flicker of hope, the same spark that had kept me going in my darkest hours. But as I began to speak, sharing my journey with raw honesty, something magical happened. The audience leaned in, hanging on every word. I shared my struggles, my triumphs, and most importantly, the lessons I'd learned along the way. I told them that while their bodies might be changed, their spirits remained unbroken. That they were more than their injuries, more than their limitations. To show others that they weren't alone in their struggles, that there was a community of survivors ready to lift them up. I saw tears, nods of understanding, and most importantly, sparks of hope igniting in their eyes. But in every way that truly matters, I danced through life with more grace, passion, and purpose than ever before. This is the message I carry with me, the truth I live every day. And it's the gift I hope to share with the world, one story, one heart, one life at a time. My story isn't one of loss, but of rebirth. And I invite all who hear it to join me in this beautiful, challenging, inspiring dance of life. It's about finding beauty in our scars, purpose in our pain, and hope in our darkest moments. I may have lost my legs, but I found my voice. And with that voice, I will continue to remind others that we are all capable of rising above our circumstances, of turning our pain into purpose, our struggles into strength. It's about recognizing that our value as human beings isn't determined by our physical abilities, but by the love we share, the lives we touch, and the difference we make in the world. With tears in her eyes, she asked, "How do you do it? How do you stay so strong?" I wheeled closer to her, took her hand in mine, and said, "By remembering that strength isn't about what you can do with your body, but what you can do with your spirit." As I spoke about my experiences, I saw something change in the eyes of those around me. Hope. I've met people who have faced unimaginable challenges, lost limbs, paralysis, chronic illness, and yet continue to live lives full of joy, purpose, and meaning. Recognition. A sense of possibility. I realized that my story had power, the power to inspire, to comfort, to motivate. I would not let this tragedy define me, not just for myself, but for them. A spark of defiance, a whisper of hope. Hours of physical therapy, learning to navigate the world from a wheelchair, facing a barrage of pitying looks from strangers. I traveled the country, sharing my story with anyone who would listen. From small community centers to large corporate events, I spoke about the power of resilience, the importance of self-love, and the ability we all have to rise above our circumstances. Days when phantom pain would leave me gasping, nights when old fears and doubts would creep in. But I had learned to embrace these moments as part of my journey, not as setbacks but as reminders of how far I'd come. There were days when the pain, both physical and emotional, threatened to overwhelm me. Each time I shared my story, I found myself growing stronger, more confident. The woman who had once felt broken beyond repair was now standing tall, metaphorically speaking, in front of thousands, her voice ringing out clear and strong. The sun on my face, the breeze in my hair, it felt like freedom. In that moment, I realized that while I might have lost my legs, I hadn't lost my spirit. The world was still out there, waiting for me to explore it. Nights when I cried myself to sleep, mourning the life I'd lost. I lay there, a broken shell of the woman I once was, both legs amputated after a devastating car accident. But even as my body lay shattered, something deep within me refused to be silenced. I remember the first time I truly looked at myself in the mirror after the accident. In those early days, every movement was a battle. My family rallied around me, their love a constant source of strength. Rehabilitation was a grueling journey. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, something began to change. As I pushed my body to its new limits, I discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed. The wheelchair that had once felt like a prison became an extension of myself, a tool for reclaiming my independence. I remember the first time I wheeled myself outside the hospital grounds. As I adjusted to my new life, I began to seek out others who had faced similar challenges. It was during one of these meetings that I had an epiphany. That realization became my new purpose. My first major speaking engagement was terrifying. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. But it wasn't just about inspiring others. Of course, there were still challenges. One of the most profound experiences came when I was invited to speak at a rehabilitation center for newly injured patients. I spoke to them not as a motivational speaker, but as a fellow survivor. As I finished speaking, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. That moment crystallized everything for me. I realized that my purpose wasn't just to inspire, but to connect. Today, as I continue my work, I am constantly amazed by the resilience of the human spirit. I've learned that true strength isn't about never falling, but about rising every time we fall. As I wheel onto stages across the country, I no longer see myself as a victim of tragedy, but as a testament to the indomitable human spirit. They said I'd never dance again. And in the literal sense, they were right. We may lose parts of ourselves, but we never lose our power to rise, to inspire, to love.